Hello there. Wanted to share with you a little bit about Mendelian genetics. And so let's start from the very beginning. Okay. First off, this gentleman's timeline. This individual was not healthy enough to work on the farm, from what I understand, and so was sent off to a monastery. And because of that, had certain responsibilities with the monastery, one of which was included tending the plants in the garden. Okay. For a number of years, he studied pea plants, and in this endeavor, he figured out basic genetics. There's a guy himself, Mendel. For purposes of this recording, I'm going to skip this part, but the timeline can be seen there if you can access the Prezi. So, why peas? What was the point? First of all, there were many varieties of peas. He was fortunate enough to inherit some true breeding lines, or if you were talking about animals, you might say they were purebred lines. They had a relatively short time of breeding and could produce a great number of offspring at one time. So, also, the flowers were very easy to work with. He could control the pollination quite easily. Bit of levity. So self-pollination versus cross-pollination. If the male portion of a flower fertilizes the female portion of that same flower, that's self-pollination. Okay, cross-pollination could be accomplished by purposefully removing parts from one flower and using literally an old school artist paintbrush to transfer pollen from one flower to another. So pollination in these plants was easily controlled. Okay. So notice the flower on the right-hand side here. This flower, these stamens have already been removed. Okay. Now, Mendel had some amazing good fortune. He studied 7 characteristics, or what he referred to as 7 characters. We would call those today 7 traits, all of which were simple dominance, which is amazing because other forms of inheritance patterns show up in plants regularly. So if any of these 7 characters had been transferred through something other than simple dominance, he might have had a much more difficult time figuring out what was going on. And here are those characters. Tall plants were dominant to short plants, round plants were dominant to wrinkled, and so on and so forth. And each of these were merely a case of simple dominance. So in Mendel's experiment, the hybridization of these plants, he kept meticulous records. And one of the things that he did was label each part. The P's and F's here. The P1 is the first parental cross. So the P in this case stands for parental. F1 is the first filial generation. Filial in this instance referring to sons or offspring. There are several European languages refer to offspring as filial in some way, shape, or form. In French, on doit dire fils. Fils means son in French. So the word filial here implies sons or offsprings. So P1, the first parental cross, F1, the first set of offspring. Okay. Then because they're plants, he could take 2 parents from that F1 generation, cross them, and produce the F2 or the second filial generation or the second set of offspring.